Have you ever developed a new insecurity that you weren't aware of because of social media?
I definitely have sometimes gotten upset, thinking that I didn't get invited to something.
I've noticed that I've definitely seen things in myself that I wasn't as happy with. Also appearances, like their hair might look nice or their skin might look nice, and then you find yourself comparing it to yourself.
From PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Labs
and WETA Wellbeings,
this is On Our Minds
with Noah
and Zion,
a podcast about teenagers and mental health, because life is hard.
Really hard.
And hearing stories about what other teens are going through and how they're getting better, it helps.
A note before we get started. Today we're going to be talking about anxiety, depression, and the effects of social media. If you or someone you know needs help, we have a list of resources at studentreportinglabs.org/mental health resources.
Additionally, if issues related to anxiety, depression, and social media are triggering topics, we recommend you skip this episode or listen with a trusted adult.
Hey Noah!
Hey Zion.
Noah, what's on your mind today?
You know, what's really been on my mind is that this is the last episode of this season of On Our Minds.
I was just about to say how crazy that is, but I've recently learned that word crazy is something we should think twice about before saying.
Remember in episode 3 on race in class when Morgan told someone at school that she worked at a psychology clinic and the other student said, for crazy people? And she had to educate him on how people with mental health disorders aren't crazy. Calling someone that is really disrespectful.
There's also the word insane, which has a lot of historical and cultural meaning. It was used to categorize and harm people.
I also, catch myself using those words all the time, but it's important not to use them when describing someone's mental health or their personality.
It's going to be hard to stop using those words for me because I think I use them a little too frequently.
Changing habits is really hard. Today, we're actually going to be sharing some stories about people who, despite the challenges, did manage to change their habits, specifically in regards to social media.
I am constantly on Pinterest. It's a little bit addictive, just a little bit. Sitting there for hours looking at Pinterest and social media apps like that, it can really drain you and make you feel like you just kind of wasted your time a little bit.
In our first story, Caroline from Austin, Texas, briefly spoke to several students about the toxicity they find in social media.
What social media apps do you have?
I have Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat.
I only have Snapchat.
I have Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat.
In the time since you downloaded these apps, would you say you've noticed a difference in your mental health or self-image?
Yes, I do think that I have seen a difference in my mental health, and I think that social media has played a role in that.
For me, Instagram has been the most toxic and bad for my self-image.
Have you ever developed a new insecurity that you weren't aware of because of social media?
I definitely have sometimes gotten upset, thinking that I didn't get invited to something.
I've noticed that I've definitely seen things in myself that I wasn't as happy with. Also appearances, like their hair might look nice or their skin might look nice, and then you find yourself comparing it to yourself.
Have you ever seen an ad on social media that appealed to an insecurity of yours?
I've seen multiple ads that are supposed to help fix insecurities. I've even been drawn to some.
I've seen many detox tea ads, and those can be really harmful. I think that these teas are usually marketed towards young, insecure teenagers who are looking for a cheap and easy solution to their insecurities.
Overall, would you say that the positives outweigh the negatives, or the negatives outweigh the positives of social media in general?
I think that definitely the negatives outweigh the positives. It's definitely gone way too far, and it's for sure had a negative impact overall.
I really agree with a lot that everyone in this story was talking about. Promoting diet culture is one of the things that really affects teenagers the most because we're in our most insecure part of our lives. And, we all want to be skinny. We all want to, have perfect skin and like look pretty. But, we're all unique. Not all of us can, look like Kylie Jenner.
Teenagers are extremely insecure, especially at like our ages. Like, I know for me, I see like those like makeup ads and the girls' faces will look like so clear and pretty. And I'm just like, oh, I wish my face looked like that. But it's important that we kind of step back sometimes and read those messages and understand where they're coming from and make sure we're not falling into that trap of insecurity.
Yeah, social media sometimes makes us more insecure. It increases our fear of missing out, but then our insecurities make us keep coming back to social media as if it could make us feel better. It's a dangerous cycle sometimes.
Especially with comments and likes, because you can start to overthink how people perceive you. You even start to question if certain people really like you.
Isabel, who goes to Independence High School in North Carolina, talks about that in our next story.
From 6th to 7th grade, I struggled a lot with depression, anxiety, and I struggled with self-confidence. When I first entered middle school, I instantly got haters that called me disgusting and thought I was ugly. And they totally disrespected my opinion just because it was different than theirs. I started to think that this would be my life now, that I would stay in this depressed mindset and just hate how I looked and myself for the rest of my life. I never thought I would ever not feel that way. I also had an Instagram account where I would post polls in my story saying, do you think I'm ugly, yes or no? Because I cared so much about what people thought of me, and my haters that I didn't know were my haters followed me on my account and voted that yes, they do think I'm ugly. So just those things that people would say about me on social media would hurt me a lot. So I deleted my old Instagram account and I wasn't on my phone for 6 months. I just took a break from a phone and social media in general to just find myself and just to do better for myself. It was a huge change in my life, but the outcome was worth it because after that, I didn't care what people had to say about me because I wasn't crowded by those words from those people from social media anymore. The way I treat people changed so much. I used to be so hateful, but literally now I am not hateful towards anybody. It doesn't matter what they did to me. It doesn't matter if they cussed me out. I still wouldn't treat them like that because that would make me like them. I learned a lot of things throughout those years in my life when I dealt with all that stuff, but the main thing I learned was to love everybody, including yourself, because that does so much in this world. Literally, one positive thing that you tell somebody, something as simple as how are you doing or good morning or that you're beautiful, that could mean the world to them and that could make somebody's day.
Isabel is not alone in always wondering if people think she's ugly or not and putting polls on Instagram asking that question. My friends, they would post stuff like that and kind of understand it can be sort of a joke in some way because it's usually them trying to look pretty or whatever. My immediate reaction is to, send them a message and be like, are you okay? You look great in this photo, but what's the meaning behind it? Are you doing fine?
I think it's really detrimental to your health to ask anyone other than, yourself or someone you're really close to for validation.
I'm not a big social media person, don't get me wrong, but every single time I even get close to thinking about deleting my Instagram or my Twitter, the first thing I jump to is, how many people do I use that app to contact? Because I don't have everyone's phone number. I don't have an iPhone. I can't just iMessage someone who doesn't have a phone. So the only thing really keeping me in is the communication aspect, which is what social media originally was about.
In our next story, Stephen from Pflugerville, Texas, did an experiment of taking a break from social media.
For the past year, mostly everyone I know has been spending most of their time inside their houses, with only screens serving as their connection to the outside world. This has been useful for getting schoolwork done and socializing, but in my case, it's also hurt. The constant checking of bad news, doom scrolling, as it's called by NPR, has increased my anxiety over the state of the world. To combat this anxiety, I decided I would take a week off from these addictive platforms and venture out into doing more fulfilling activities off of screens, and then return and reevaluate how I use these platforms and ask myself if they're even necessary. I'll be checking in daily to describe my mood changes and what I've been doing to fill the time that I'm not online. It is currently day 1 of the 7-day social media break I am taking. And so far, it feels like a nice break. Recently, with the extra time I've got now, I've been going outside a lot more, riding my bike, going for walks. Overall, I just think this is probably the best thing I could have done for my mental health, and I'm looking forward to the next 6 days. It is now day 2 of my 7-day break from social media, and I have to say what I'm noticing now is that I can focus for so much longer because there is no more of that urge to check for notifications, for news, for whatever new content is out. This has definitely helped when it comes to schoolwork. Yeah, that is just one positive development from this whole break I'm taking. 5 days to go. It is now day 4 of my 7-day break from social media, and I've decided that I am never going to go back to the way I used to use these platforms. And I realized that I was truly only using it for one thing, and that was for social purposes, because most of my friends use social media to communicate. And that's why I won't be quitting entirely. Today is day 6 of my 7-day break from social media. I have to say, since it's Saturday, it's been a little hard to come up with things to do in order to fill my free time. Today's day 7 of the 7-day break from social media. I feel that I'm way less anxious than I was at the beginning of this break. I've concluded that I need to change up how I use social media and how much of it I use. And I think if anyone else is struggling to stay off of social media, try out the same break and then reintroduce the tools to your life and see what works best for you. Personally, I feel so much better mentally.
Good for Steven. I'm so proud of him for being able to do that, to stop being on social media and take a break. I feel that we're really using those apps and stuff for distractions.
Completely deleting your social media isn't the only way to improve your mental health. Student Reporting Labs recently spoke with Curtis Roach, a 21-year-old musician and influencer from Detroit, Michigan. He needs social media to market his music and brand.
Curtis Roach is a big deal in Michigan. I'm from Michigan. He's performed at festivals alongside huge acts like Billie Eilish. He is also known for his song, Bored in the House.
Here's what Curtis Roach had to say about using his phone, and one thing he does to counteract the constant stream of bad news.
I'm very on top of my, zen overall, but I felt like with just this pandemic and you open your phone and you see like so many different negative news articles, there's a mass shooting somewhere, or a Black life is taken away by the police every day. You know what I'm saying? Those things just make you want to lose your mind after a while. So it's kind of like a thing where you just writing down your thoughts. There's this thing that I learned from the therapist, these daily morning writes. It's like you fill up 3 pages of your thoughts as soon as you wake up. Don't stop. Doesn't matter what it is. You just 3 pages and then go on about your day. And that right there helped me like tremendously.
I see why Curtis journals. It can really help when you're having like bad days and just do not, want to talk to people, or if you just can't find a way to get those feelings out. Writing them down on paper can really help. I know for me, That's what I do when I'm having like really rough days or I just can't get something off my mind. I'll write like a little poem about how I'm feeling, and it helps a lot. It relieves my stress and anxiety and everything. So I can see how that helped him.
But, we should also point out that social media isn't always bad. It really depends on your relationship with it. John Barnes goes to HB Woodlawn in Arlington, Virginia. Here's John talking about what adults get wrong about social media.
For a lot of people, depending on their household they live in, maybe people in the LGBT community who want to learn more about, or just connect with people who are similar to them. Maybe they're in a household where that's not safe, or people who maybe want to learn about sex ed, but that's something their school district doesn't teach. Their parents won't talk about it with them. So I think social media is a great place, especially I've seen TikTok, is just people asking questions on accounts with maybe people who are a trusted source, like a therapist or some kind of educator, medical professional, because they don't have that resource right them in their household or at their school. So this kind of connects to the idea of learning, because I just always see it on my page, people asking questions because they don't have any other place to go. And I think it's great that some people are getting those resources that they wouldn't normally have.
For me, social media is one of my main entertainment resources. And I completely agree with what John said about it being a great resource for people who are LGBTQ, kind of like I am. Social media was my first exposure to LGBTQ culture and like the whole concept of it. It definitely helped me through trying to figure out who I am.
No, I'm so glad that it helped you with your own identity. I think social media definitely has some benefits, especially when you're trying to find your people.
Terry from Alabama, he mentioned some other benefits to social media, and that's creativity and self-expression.
And the side of social media that I like is when people express themselves and bonding through art. I think that's very important, versus focusing on like how many likes I get or something. You just have to set times. You just have to have time, be on social media and, a time to step away and meditate and breathe. One thing I do is, I pray. Spend time with your family and just really find ways to debrief, I would say. Clear your mind.
Clearing your mind is super helpful. I know for me, I meditate, and that experience, just meditating and kind of connecting with myself, is so special to me. It really helps me just calm down and take a moment to really understand my emotions, understand what I'm going through at the time. And yeah, it just has a big effect on my life and how I feel and how I process my emotions. So I think it's extremely important to do.
I actually had the pleasure of speaking with Maryland's Montgomery County Mindfulness Coordinator, Jeffrey Donald. We spoke about how yoga and meditation in schools can make a huge difference in our mental health. Hi, Mr. Donald. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Noah. Thanks so much for having me.
So I understand that you're both a teacher and the mindfulness coordinator for Montgomery County Public Schools in Maryland. Tell me about how you started doing mindfulness and yoga with your students.
It was a total accident. I had been teaching at the high school level for many years and really saw a great amount of my students weren't being served emotionally. The academics was fine, but there was no one addressing the social, emotional, mental health piece. And I'd always been doing yoga and mindfulness myself as a personal practice. But one day, these kids of mine, every once in a while, and you know this, Noah, you know how to get your teacher upset. They were pushing my buttons that day. Regularly, I would keep my doors open. But that day I closed my doors and I whipped out my yoga mat and I started doing some meditation just to kind of get myself back together for the second half of the day. Well, I'd forgotten to lock the doors, and a couple of my kids came in and they said something down the line of, "What are you doing?" And I pretty much told them, it's too difficult for me to explain. It would take too long. Just sit down. I've got a couple of mats right here. Sit down with me and do it with me. I'll show you. And those two young men sat down with me and we did it together. And when we were done 10 minutes later, they said, "Can we do this again tomorrow?" And I said, "Sure." I really didn't think they'd show up, but they did. They came. And that turned into 4 kids, and 4 kids turned into 8 kids, and 8 turned into 20, and then into 30, then to 60. And eventually it turned into a school-wide program. My only job is to teach mindfulness and yoga and meditation to 208 schools. I got the best job ever.
So how have you seen mindfulness and yoga help your students?
Perfect example of this. Tim was a 10th grader when I met him, and he was really not served by the system. He had a truly difficult childhood and some really hard and difficult things that had happened to him. And so he was extremely disillusioned and had given up on school. I was rotating into his classroom once a week to meditate with students and teach them some mindfulness techniques. Very slowly, over the course of a few months, he's really started to see his part in how this was playing out and how his life was playing out. How he was seeing that his actions were an issue as well as the system. And he slowly turned that school year. He went from failing every class to passing every class with an A. And he went on to Brown University and just graduated a few weeks back. He's one of my all-stars. This isn't a competition. This is about you knowing who you are and how you can work with yourself for that better outcome.
So how does yoga affect the brain and our emotions? Is it purely for relaxation and mindfulness, or can it also be like strengthening physically?
It's both. You see, your emotional state is the center of your consciousness. Think about this. Think about the last time you were angry or upset. Were you thinking straight? Absolutely not. So it affects the way we think. Our emotions also affect our body as well. You know, we have these physical manifestations of stress that comes in many forms, anything from aches and pains to sickness to some pretty debilitating and treacherous diseases. And all of this begins and ends with our emotional state.
We're going to take a little bit of a shift. We're going to talk about social media. So a lot of student stories that were submitted, they talked about how social media has taken such a toll on their mental health. So how do you think we get students or anyone else who feels like they're addicted to their phone and social media to like move away from it and stop using it as, you know, like sort of a coping skill?
I recommend walking away, even briefly, even a couple of minutes away, kind of brings us back to us. And I watch my kids go through this as well. You know, they walk away even for a moment and then they start saying, I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored. Well, you know what? Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you should just go take a walk. You know, go outside, get your face under the sun. You know, go. Even if it's 5 minutes and then come back. It really kind of grounds us again into the real world.
And we could also use yoga during that time when we're away from social media.
Absolutely. You know, let me just also add that embracing silence can be really difficult, but it also can be very cathartic to us when we're so accustomed to that information overload.
For those who have never practiced yoga or mindfulness, how do they get started, especially when they don't have a resource from their school?
There are countless videos and platforms like on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. My only caution would be to just go easy at first because you're working muscles, or maybe you are unaccustomed to being still for, you know, even more than a few minutes. And that can be really disconcerting or uncomfortable. So just take your time, ease yourself in, see if you like it, see if it's your thing. No matter what you have done or no matter what was done to you, no matter what your economic status is, your social status, your race, your gender, with a few simple tools, the world can really open up to you. There are no accidents. You were created exactly as God intended. You are perfect. I like to say that. It's important to hear.
Thank you so much for coming to talk with us today.
Thank you, Noah. It's been a pleasure being here.
I think that's so cool how schools in Montgomery County, Maryland are integrating yoga into their curriculum. I know for me, my school, we have a mental health week, and at some events we do yoga and stuff like that. But I really wish we did more. I would love to have, yoga every week or even maybe like every day after school. I think that would be so nice.
In our health curriculum, they do teach meditation. I just wish it was a little more in-depth,
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm just thinking about all the information that we've learned from the last 5 episodes and, how quickly this has all gone by.
I've learned that connecting with your emotions and taking time with yourself is so important to improving your mental health and really looking at signs that you may not be okay.
Yeah, and for me, I, learned that everyone's, going through their own kind of thing, and, having other people around there with you to help you through it is a very important thing. You need a support system.
That is so true. I'm so glad I got to do this podcast with you, Noah. I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, I really enjoyed doing this with you also, Zion. We kind of have like a new friendship after this.
We actually have one more thing for our listeners. It's a bonus episode.
Yeah, we got to speak with Tara Brock, who is a psychologist, author, and teacher of meditation. The conversation was so good, and it was really hard to edit down.
And Tara even led us in a guided meditation that really helped me relax and calm down. So that's included as well.
Be sure to listen to that bonus episode, which comes out next week.
It's going to be awesome to hear more of what's on our minds. Today's stories were produced by Caroline from McCallum High School in Austin, Texas, with help from Connected Educator David Winters.
And Isabel from Independence High School in Charlotte, North Carolina, with help from Connected Educator Marie Worsley-Matthews.
Stephen from Pflugerville High School in Pflugerville, Texas, with help from a Connected Educator David Robb.
SRL digital producer Rawan Elbaba and associate youth media producer Becky Wandel produced the conversations with Curtis Roach and John Barnes.
SRL intern Grace Vitaglione interviewed Terry from Clay Chalkville High School in Pinson, Alabama, with help from Connected Educator Abby Gillette.
And many thanks to educator and mindfulness coach Jeffrey Donald for giving us his time.
This episode was produced by Student Reporting Lab's production assistant Mercedes Ezeji and SRL youth media producer Briget Ganske.
Executive producer Leah Clapman. SRL Senior Director Elisa Strada, and help from the rest of the Student Reporting Lab staff.
And music by Blue Dot Sessions.
If you or someone you know needs help, we have a list of resources at studentreportinglabs.org/mental health resources.
And tell your friends about us. Spread the word. The more people who know about mental health, the better.